drawer, door. Drawer, door. Say that 10 times fast. Drawer, door, drawer, door, drawer. Okay. Well, anyway. Hi, I'm Liv, and welcome to the Leopard Lodge. If you are new here, this is the channel dedicated to creative projects in the home. And I think today's video really follows through on that. So I have this desk. It had excellent storage capacity, but it was looking pretty dated. Think like 90s pine home office vibe. Not what we want. Terrible hardware, this weird kind of medium light stain, you know, that like slightly yellowish red pine stain they did in the 90s. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Well, that's what we were dealing with. I also did not really have space in my home for this anymore. I had replaced it with a smaller desk since my office is also our dining room, and I usually just end up working at the dining table anyway. But my friend Ellie needed a desk for her new apartment that I've been helping her decorate. I have possibly mentioned this once before, and this is just one piece of the puzzle that you will get to see. Ah yes, we are also on a pretty strong budget here, so can't do too many flourishes, but I think we're gonna be okay. So I decided to save this desk. Found a lot of inspiration from the executive desks of the mid-century. There were usually 2 columns of drawers, often on peg legs. My plan was to restain the top a more mid-century color, paint everything else, add some new hardware, and possibly add peg legs if it didn't change the height too much. First things first, I removed the awful dated hardware. And honestly, I just didn't even donate it. I threw it away. I'm sorry, Earth. It was just so bad. And removed all of the drawers and took off the door. Here's the thing. The desk had a stain and varnish on it that was in some nooks and crannies that were going to be difficult to reach with my sander, especially these indentations on the largest drawer and door. So I decided to try out a paint and varnish stripper for the very first time. I chose Citrus Strip, which is supposed to be less toxic, I heard. I'm not gonna go too in depth on how to actually use the stripper because, spoiler alert, this wound up being the wrong choice for this project and ultimately caused me a lot more work than I really needed to do. But the basic premise is that you apply this gel with a brush, wait 1 to 24 hours. I've heard it works better if you cover it with plastic wrap, but I didn't want to waste the plastic and stuff, so I didn't do that. And then you scrape off the paint or varnish, which is wildly satisfying, I might add. I plan on going deeper in on how to use stripper and my experience with it in a future video where the process was much more necessary. I recently picked up a ton of mid-century furniture for free from this house that was getting rid of it, but a lot of it needs a little bit of TLC. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss some of that content. I abandoned the stripper because I was going to need more coats to get all of the varnish off. And midway through, I decided that I was actually going to cut out the wood where it indented in the larger drawer and door. I also wasn't planning on staining any part of the base or drawers, just painting. So I didn't really need to completely remove the former stain and varnish and everything. I just really needed to give it a rough sand to get the paint to stick. So after I abandoned the whole citrus strip situation, I moved on to making my cutouts. I drilled holes in each corner. This way I could drop in my jigsaw blade and precisely cut around the perimeter until the wood came out. What am I filling those cutouts with? So glad you asked. This super cool sheet metal that comes in a variety of patterns. I've been wanting to use this for a long time on a bigger project that I haven't been able to get to. So I was very excited to finally dip my toe in. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of a more industrial style of like wicker caning. I mean, I wouldn't put it on like a chair or anything, but if you've seen a lot of people do cutouts with the wicker caning, this is kind of the same concept. They even make a similar pattern. I will link the product below. Some varieties do come in brass already, but it wasn't available in the size and time frame that I needed it in. I was racing to get this project done before a rainstorm came. But that's fine because the silver was actually cheaper than the brass and I own gold spray paint, so we're good. Usually you would remove stripper with more chemicals, but because I was still gonna need to do some more sanding, I kind of just sprayed everything down with a hose and then wiped off the extra gunk and then let them dry in the sun. And then I went back in with a full strength acetone just to make sure that every last little bit of goop was gone. In the meantime, while that dried, I started sanding down the top of the desk. This I planned to restain, so I needed to take off every last bit of former varnish and stain. To create a totally clean slate, I first went in with 60 grit sandpaper to remove every last trace of the previous stain and varnish. Then I switched to 220 grit to smooth everything out. Back with some 60 grit, I gave the entire base a rough sand, and I found that flipping it over made that a much easier process. And the same for the drawers once they were dry. Time to prime. If you are going to paint wood, I cannot recommend a primer enough. Not only does it mean using less paint, but the primer I chose was also created to stick to slicker surfaces, so I wouldn't require quite so much sanding, even if it doesn't actually seem that way. Meaning less work in theory, unless you're a ding-dong like me and decided to do this whole like citrus strip thing and then abandon it and then sand, and then really you're just, wasting a day of work. It could have been so much simpler, but it was a good learning opportunity, so at least we have that. Before I started painting, I taped off any parts that I didn't want to get paint on. And just like painting a wall, I cut in with the paintbrush into all of the tricky corners that I wouldn't be able to reach with the roller. This made fairly simple work for me once it was time to roll. I highly recommend when you're working on furniture like this that you find a stool or a crate or something to sit on. It will be so much easier on your back and your knees, and not having an achy body is important. Work smart, not hard, is a thing people say that I'm not usually very good at. While that dries, let's jump back over to our drawers and door. I wanted to create a trim around the cutouts to make them look more finished. I got these very small dowels. I think they were like 3/8 of an inch. Measured my openings and cut the dowels to size using my miter box. If you cannot afford a miter saw or don't have space for one, or both, I cannot recommend this little box more. This little box is less than $10, maybe a little bit more if you buy it with the saw, and you can make all sorts of precise small cuts, and you can do angles. There's endless things to do with this. Sanded the ends of the dowels. To glue them into the door, I used wood glue and then painter's tape to hold them in place, kind of acting like a clamp. And repeated this all for the drawer cutout as well. When this was dry, I removed all of the tape and used wood filler to fill in any gaps between the trim, as well as the existing dips in the wood, just to get a smooth surface. It's kind of akin to caulking. In fact, this may have actually worked better if I'd used caulking. That might have been a good hack. We may never know. I also filled the previous hardware holes because the replacement that I bought was a different size. And of course, all of this wood filler got a sand when it was dry, and new holes were drilled for the new hardware. From here, I was able to prime all of the drawers and door as well, and it was finally time for color. This olivey chartreuse may feel a little too familiar to you, and if my desk candle holder comes to mind, that's because the original chartreuse was a first round sample that didn't work out. This dimmed down replacement color was originally meant to go on 2 walls in Ellie's new apartment, but we made a game day decision to keep all of the walls the same color. We still had the leftover quart of paint, and we still wanted to incorporate this color into the design, so this desk was an excellent opportunity. Oh yes, I changed my mind midway through and decided that the drawers and door needed to be another color because the gold sheet metal was not going to pop enough. So now you're all going to laugh at me because it looks just like my candle holder because it's the same green. And no, I don't know why I look mad while I'm painting. That eyebrow has a mind of its own. See it? There it goes. My friend drew a caricature of me last week with the eyebrow. I don't know if I ever realized that it was that prominent. Learn new things about yourself every day. In the light of a new day, with the table flipped back to its rightful position, I primed the top of the wood with my pre-stain, which I always recommend for smooth sailing staining that isn't blotchy. Let it dry, do the in-between sanding with the 220 grit, and was ready for the actual stain. This is American Walnut by Verity. When dry, everything got a matte polyacrylic clear coat. The wood stained part getting 2 coats with a sand in between. But, you know, I didn't think it was that interesting for you to just be seeing like, oh, she puts a clear thing on and then she sands again and then she puts a stain on and then she sands again and then she puts another clear thing on and sands again and then she puts another clear thing on. You know, it just gets a little bit repetitive and you just want to see the finished piece, right? Okay, well, calm down because we still have one more thing to do. Maybe 2. To cut the aforementioned spray painted sheet metal, I made measurements and had just enough to cover my openings. Using these handy things called aviation snips, I was able to easily cut the metal. The existing lines in the pattern ensured me a straight cut, which was very useful. I gave these a quick sand just to make sure that nobody slashed their hand open or anything. Lined them up on the back of the openings and attached using 1/2-inch brass wood screws. I then remembered that I also needed to spray paint the hinges for the door to match. So we got that done real quick and it was finally time to put the desk back together. Cue assembly montage. It's really not that fun. Time to get in the car and take it to Ellie. You might be asking whatever happened to that whole peg leg idea, and the truth of the matter is they were just going to make the desk too tall for her ergonomic needs. Sometimes we must make aesthetic concessions for our bodies to not hurt. But I don't think they make or break the piece, and I love the way that this came out. Tom is pretty jealous and definitely secretly wishes that he could keep this desk, but it has been promised to someone else. My favorite part of this was the sheet metal cutouts. Like I said, I've been wanting to dip my toe into this for so long, and I really love how they look. And I can't wait to use this material again in the future. Let me know in the comments if you want to get into using this product and what you would use it for. Give the video a thumbs up if you can, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.